them on a professional level. And I take that seat and I start learning and I see what value I can bring to them, but also what value comes back to me. And usually when that ping pong of value comes about, you get a multiplier of value to the company you're in.
Welcome to Entrepreneur's Handbook Podcast, where we share inspiring startup stories with practical takeaways for you, the listener. Today's guest is Avishai Sam Bitton, who's the current VP of Marketing and Growth at 8fig. It's a company that's raised over 50 million in the Series A, and they help Shopify and Amazon owners to scale their businesses from 6 figures and 7 figures all the way up to 8 figures. In the past, Avishai has been a serial entrepreneur and he's founded 2 of his own companies that have had major success. Aribi, which was bought by LinkedIn, and Brainy, which reaches over 100 million people a month through their content. He shared so many stories about things he's doing to make sure that he keeps learning and keeps challenging himself to become a better entrepreneur to build better companies in the future. I really hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Welcome to Entrepreneur's Handbook, Avishai. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So I've looked into your background and you've got a really interesting story about how you became an entrepreneur and your journey since then. But for the people listening today, could you tell them, your story, what made you become an entrepreneur in the first place?
Well, I think it's something I got from home. I saw my family help build a business all the way to the IPO stage and the New York Stock Exchange of a famous textile company. I basically saw scale from a very young age. I saw how things grew from 0 to 1 and then from 1 to 100. And at a certain age, I had to move to Tel Aviv. When I came here, I saw that scale was not just a brick and mortar scale, was not just in factories. It was something you can do from your laptop. And I was fascinated by how much people you can reach from your laptop. And really my first business ever, the one that I'm proud of, that really scaled, was the business of starting an online publisher that I reached a lot of people, and it was kind of garage mode. I learned a lot about analytics and how people engage and ads. Eventually, that led me to start an analytics company that recently got sold to LinkedIn, being named Aribi. From there, taking that understanding of analytics a step forward and starting a company called Brainy, that is a data-driven publisher that bootstrapped its way with no VC money all the way to 62 employees and reaching 800 million readers a year. After all these kind of, entrepreneurial lessons, I found out that one of the things I love the most to do is actually not just, be an entrepreneur, but to be involved with entrepreneurs. So I started angel investing, and I found very early seed stage, pre-seed stage entrepreneurs to invest in. To kind of be honest, it wasn't enough. And I wanted to touch more kind of entrepreneurs and to get to know more and to really feel what it was like back in the early days when I just started something small with myself. And that led me to join 8fig, which is a company that's all about eCommerce sellers. But what are eCommerce sellers if not, those solo entrepreneurs, those people who are right now building something in their garage from 6 figures to 7 figures and then to hopefully scale to 8 figures. And that's hence the name 8fig. So that's kind of the process that kind of led me to understand that I always want to be in the entrepreneurship hot seat.
And before we started recording, you mentioned as well about there's so many people in Israel who seem to become entrepreneurs and be successful entrepreneurs too. What was the reasoning behind that? You said about how some of the background and when you moved to Israel that it seemed like everyone wanted to make their own company. Could you share a bit more about that? Israel
is a very unique country in terms of that when you grow up here, you feel that you're on borrowed time. We have all kinds of geopolitical and security threats here in Tel Aviv, and you learn to live with them. And while you live with them, you understand that life is short. And in the army, which is mandatory here, I've served 3 years. In the army, you learn that even in a short amount of time, you can build great things, and a lot of hacking has to go into it sometimes. People sometimes think our army is something probably super organized, like it's the military. But inside that organization, there's a lot of creativity that comes into play. That creativity kind of rolls with you back into citizenship when you finish the military. And if you feel like you're on borrowed time and you have all this kind of hacking experience from 2-3 years that you were in the military, it kind of feels very natural that you're going to want to try and build something. And I think that we have the highest amount of unicorns per capita here. Usually you don't get something like that unless it's something that gets embedded in the population from a very young age. And now I feel that there's a whole generation of younger kids, 13, 14, 15, who are growing up looking at their big brothers starting startups, and they have something to look up to. So it's going to be a snowball. And I think the more time passes, the more there will be successful Israeli startups. And, the lines are already blurred. There's an entrepreneur from Israel, and the startup is not Israeli. It's already, it's a New York startup, it's a London startup, it's an Austin startup. I think the entrepreneurship is Israeli, but the companies are not as Israeli. Can think about Lemonade and Monday. You don't feel they're Israeli companies, but the entrepreneurs behind them are 100% Israeli.
It's one thing I've always found interesting, because I think last time I looked, Israel and the UK both have the same number of unicorns, despite Israel having a much smaller population. And obviously with the UK, it's got London, it's got quite a lot of hubs of different talent. But even despite that, the per capita amount of unicorns in Israel is so much higher. And you mentioned that after you finish your military service, then you're looking at different ways to build businesses. And Uribe was your first massively successful one. But what were some of those early failures that you had that you learned from and then took those lessons to then build the later companies that were so much more successful?
I think the lessons are divided into three boxes. There's, first of all, the people. Who are the people around you? Who do you hire? Who do you want to work with? I think that one of the most important things that you have to remember when you're building something, that if you want to really reach scale, you can't build it alone. You have to have the right people around you. There's a certain amount of scale that you can reach alone, and then you need maybe a virtual assistant or maybe your first hire. And I think that the lessons I learned about hiring people is that what worked for me will not work for you, and will not work for a different entrepreneur that we might both know. And then you have to find the style of people you want around you that pushes you to be a better version of yourself. And I think that only when I reached Brainy, I understood which people I wanted to hire. And to help with that, my first hire at Brainy was actually the director of HR. That was the first hire, which is so unconventional. Now that I'm in 8Fig, the easiest thing for me to do was to tell a lot of the talented people who worked with me at Brainy, hey, join me at 8Fig. This is the opportunity. And we kind of split the talent. And a lot of people who came from Brainy with me to 8Fig have now an opportunity in a whole different industry. Some people who've stayed at Brainy have now been promoted, and I feel comfortable giving them to have full control of many aspects that I had control. So a lot of the aspects of the people. And after you understand which kind of people, then it really develops into the lessons of how do you want to manage, how do you want to lead. And managing and leading are not the same thing. You can take the same people, and if you manage and lead them in three different ways, you'll get three different results. I like to adapt my managerial and leading style to each and every person to really play to their strengths. I like to say that maybe the largest lesson I learned on a one-on-one when I'm working with somebody is to understand where they shine and to build them a easy platform to shine. Because when people are playing to their strengths, you're getting the maximum out of them in a short amount of time, which is the ideal for every entrepreneur who has people around them. I think the last but not least in terms of lessons is I learned to delegate a lot. Entrepreneurs, when they start out, it's very hard to delegate. You have to feel in control. You want to be the person doing everything. You want to feel that every touch of yours is scaling the business forward. I think that in 8Fig right now, I'm learning to delegate way more as I'm taking more of a backseat. I'm not one of the co-founders, but I'm kind of an entrepreneur in resident, and I'm delegating as a VP to a lot more people. And I trust them with a lot of things that I feel that as a entrepreneur early on, I wouldn't be able to do. And today, I feel that I really trust people building things from all the way to 0 to 1 with just me in the background. That I think that's something I could not be able to do without learning lessons along the way.
It's about the importance of people there. But when you moved from Brainy to 8Fig, obviously that must have been quite a difficult decision to not be in charge of the company you built up and you built such scale. And also one of the concerns must have been, how do I choose somebody to lead the company now that I'm going? And can the company survive without me? Because for so many entrepreneurs, it's their brainchild, right? It's like it feels so like tied to them emotionally. And how did you find that process of picking the person to take over Brainy for you and run it so that you could then focus on 8fig and the things you're more interested in the future?
Yeah, so I'll answer this a bit from the end to the beginning. First of all, it was really easy to pick as a next step in my career 8fig because our CEO, Yaron Shapira, is a master entrepreneur. He is a person who builds, and when he sees any kind of challenge or obstruction, he bulldozes it aside to keep building. And when I thought about how do I become a better entrepreneur in my next stage in life, I thought about I want to find the best entrepreneur I can find and learn from them because I want to build something very big, something that will be, built to last. And the kind of person that builds something that's built to last is hard to come by. When I met Yaron, it was like a very natural feeling of connection. And later meeting the co-founding team, it just even made it more clear that I want to join 8fig. You have Yaron who had 2 exits, which is, probably dream of many entrepreneurs to have one. So he has 2. And you have Asaf, who is our CTO, who's been with Yaron in one of them. And you have our CRO, who is Roy. He is a 2-time Olympian with disciplines and I would say an X factor that you can't find in most co-founding teams. Ask myself, do I want to really start another startup from scratch because it's my passion and because it's what society expects me to do as somebody who started already 2 businesses? Or do I want to go back to that kind of learning phase, kind of that educational seat, and treat people that I have so much respect to them on a professional level, and I take that seat and I start learning, and and I see what value I can bring to them, but also what value comes back to me. And usually when that ping pong of value comes about, you get a multiplier of value to the company you're in, and which made me feel confident that 8fig is and will continue to be a huge success story that's going to make noise all over the world. In terms of leaving Brainy, it was hard. It was, I think, one of those things that you think will never happen. Do you leave a company that you built all alone, bootstrapped, personal investment, emotional investment? And when I look at and Brainy, the company is bigger than me. It's a story that has surpassed me a long time ago, and I was in denial. And I think that's a huge lesson for every entrepreneur who builds something amazing. You should be very proud that your startup can survive without you. And I think that Brainy is not just surviving, it's growing because it has a great GM. It has a great chief editor. It has a great creative leader. And they're working as a team, and they're taking the company to the next plateau without me being there, just showing that they're more. The reason I hired them is because I believe in their talent, and the reason they're now managing it is because I guess I learned enough lessons to hire the right people to stay for the long run. So extremely proud of that young team there, and I'm extremely proud of the legacy team who was with me, who helped me build Brainy in the first, second, third year, who are today with me in 8fig. I feel like I kind of won the lottery of people in terms of that.
So 8fig is obviously going down the venture capital route, and Brainy was bootstrapped. Can you explain why with Brainy, because it was growing so fast, what made you decide not to try to get venture capital or to take on investors to make it grow faster?
I usually had an answer for that, and it kind of changed now because I met now so many other bootstrap businesses in my current role at 8fig. I used to say it's because there was no need. It was a business that I could handle alone, and I could scale it, on my time. And today, I understand that I might have made a mistake. I should have taken capital. It should not have been maybe VC capital, but some sort of capital. There are very creative solutions that allow businesses to scale without losing equity. And because I was so against losing equity, I was not willing to open my ears to hear if there are options that are around that solution. And I think that the mistake I had was the mistake that I thought that, that I've heard of everything and I knew everything. And if I could do Brainy all over again, I would find solutions that are not equity dilutive to fund the company and to bring forms of partners to help scale the business. And it would be at a cost of some of the margins, but our revenue could be through the roof. The way I feel I learned the lesson is when I was shopping around what company I want to join, what journey. When I met 8fig, it took me some time to get to know the co-founders, but when it hit me, the business model that helps bootstrap startups, businesses, e-commerce businesses scale their business without losing equity, it hit me really strong, all the kind of mistakes I did bootstrapping Brainy. And for me, that was like an epiphany moment. And I said, this is another reason, maybe a more personal reason on, looking backwards kind of, and it was like, I want to see all these businesses scale to 10, 15, $20 million in sales and see them not lose 1% of equity on the way, because I can learn from these e-commerce sellers something that I didn't learn myself when doing Brainy.
And could you explain in a bit more detail about how 8fig helps these e-commerce sellers and what exactly they do for the people listening who aren't aware of that yet?
So 8fig is a company that is really run by professionals who understand e-commerce sellers. It's not a company run by financial, I would say, personas, but it's still a fintech company. So 8fig is a SaaS platform that allows e-commerce sellers to build out their whole growth plan, to basically plan out the whole year of their lines. Lines is basically everything from the deposit, the balance, shipping the inventory, the logistics, and marketing it. And what is so unique about 8fig, it gives e-commerce sellers a platform to really manage everything in a flexible way, to plan for scale and growth without having to worry if things happen, and things do happen. Every business has a plan, and then you get punched in the face. And 8fig is there, whether your plan is, to the T running smoothly, or, there are some things that, arise and happen on the way. And I think the most beautiful thing about 8fig, it really helps people scale their business through continuous capital without ever asking any percentage of equity, which I think is the most important. That's the soul of your company, that equity. The less equity you have, you feel that you have less of your startup. And when an e-commerce seller that is running out of stock, having stock out, selling great, wants to grow, there are so many people just waiting around the corner to either take their equity or, God forbid, try to buy them out at a very low price before they reach their potential. And I think that it's not, a solution or a product that we're offering, but when you really think about what 8fig offers people to the option to reach their potential. A 6-figure seller can reach all the way to 8 figures just using 8fig for a year and a half or 2 years. It can be that simple if you're a good operator of your business. And the best entrepreneurs are not always mad geniuses. They're sometimes just excellent operators who know their business in and out.
Like, along the way, you've talked to so many entrepreneurs who are building their e-commerce businesses. Are there any of the struggles that you've seen, like many of them have to deal with, and like stories of how they've overcome those and how they've then grown on to, like, what were the barriers that were stopping them in a way from going from 6 figures to 8 figures, and how did they get through that?
So I think one barrier, which was really interesting that I encountered, it's hard for somebody to imagine being 20 times larger. If I told you, can you imagine, being heard by 20x more people tomorrow? It sounds, kind of surreal. 20x tomorrow. It's hard to imagine so much growth in a short amount of time. And what the 8fig SaaS tool basically provides sellers is the possibility to also imagine. So you're building your plan as you intended. And then the tool shows you that you can actually, maybe sell more or grow more this year. And you start selling. And what is great about this tool, it's not just you use it once and the whole year just, continues by. you go into that tool week after week, you see your performance. We have a whole dashboard that is related to 8fig that's going to show how you're actually performing. And you'll be able to actually adapt on the way, and you'll be able to do what I like to call compounding scale. So you're scaling your business to a certain point, and then you see that you're actually reaching the target. So you aim a bit higher and you kind of adapt your plan for more aggressive growth. And I think that one of the things that I recognized that I had an issue in the past, and a lot of sellers have an issue right now. It's hard to imagine jumping 20x overnight. But 8fig offers this tool that actually shows you in numbers and visualizes to you, maybe not 20x overnight, but you can be 8x by end of year. And maybe in 2 years, you can be an 8-figure seller all the way from a 6-figure seller. And the technology and the expertise that goes behind it, going hand in hand with a great operator who knows their business in and out, that makes these dreams come true. And we've had some sellers that exited their business after working with us well over a year. It was not overnight, but we've had some sellers that exited their business, and we're super proud of the tool and the product that helped them get there. And we're super proud of the entrepreneurs who knew how to utilize the tool and the product and be great operators even when they had more capital to grow.
Are you allowed to share any of the stories of or the names of some of those companies that have done that?
So a lot of them are under NDAs from whoever bought them, but I can tell you that these entrepreneurs are usually solo entrepreneurs who maybe have one or two virtual assistants, or a seller is a husband and wife. And these clients of ours are inspiration to all of our other clients who are on their way to building a bigger business. I think that we have a seller stories section that a lot of our sellers that have succeeded and not yet sold their business are featured. And we really deep dive into these sellers. And we're actually filming right now and throughout the month kind of personal video shoots going into their lives. We want to show the behind the scenes of being an entrepreneur in this space. So we're really increasing our production value and taking camera crews to meet our entrepreneurs face to face in their place of business as much as possible.
Is there anything you've learned from those entrepreneurs yourself where you're obviously helping them, but then there's probably a two-way process there of you talking to them and you also learn from them too? Is there anything you've learned from them? Oh, wow, I'm going to do that in my next business.
Definitely. I think that what I learned from e-commerce sellers that every startup can take is that you can never do too much research. These people are in a space that is completely a red ocean. Every product you create and you think you're a genius and you're going to be the only one selling it, guess what? Next week, copycat. Next month, somebody bringing a product that's similar to yours with a new feature. And I think that the best sellers of ours really research not only about their product, but about their customer and what are the needs beyond these features. And I see the brands that they're building, and they are brands. And I have a cheese board here in my house of one of the sellers, and you really see that they kind of do a 360 of researching everything in order to be the best in what they do. And then you see it in the reviews. Every entrepreneur in the e-commerce space has a unique thing that they have to deal with that I didn't have to deal with. Do most, cybersecurity or other SaaS startups have to deal with. From day one, they have to deal with reviews. So if we were to build a SaaS together, until we launched, it would take some time. And then even when we launched, nobody's running to G2 and Capterra and to Trustpilot to rant about us. But in Amazon, you get a package, and either you like what you see or you don't. And if you don't, you might go and rant on Amazon. And it's such a easy thing to do on Shopify as well, and eBay as well. And your reputation could be gone before you even started. So I learned a lot from that aspect. You need a lot of research to understand what your client wants, because you have to nail it from day one. So I really think that I'm learning a lot about research from the entrepreneurs that we're working with at 8fig.
What's really interesting to me is that even before you joined 8fig, Uribe and Brainy were so successful, but you still have this mindset that there's so much to learn still. And I think that's quite amazing, because I know many people might have just done one of those companies you've done in the past and kind of consider themselves an expert now. They're done. They don't need to learn anything else. They know what they're doing. So what have you learned since you've joined 8fig from the founders or from being part of this business that you are going to apply to your future businesses?
I think that what I was really astonished in a good way from 8fig was the ability to reach high level of product market fit and not apologize to anyone on really nailing it. There are a lot of businesses that start scaling even before product market fit is actually there. And I think that what 8fig did great, and this is a lot of kudos to the CEO, the co-founders, and the product team, which is working day and night with our sellers to build a very great product. We have excellent customer success team that's working day and night to really to build a great product. And I'm thinking about when I want to build my next startup, it's not just about the CTO next to me. I have to have a great VP of product, a great VP of customer success, and I need to have I would say, high-speed bandwidth line to my customers to get feedback fast and furious from them, to adopt their ideas and adapt the product in a way that is always changing, like always, pushing things to production according to the request. And sometimes things will break and wheels will fall off, but be very non-apologetic about pushing the product forward for the sellers or for the clients of whatever future business I'll build. And that is something that I'm for sure taking to my next startup. And I would not have that mindset if not joining 8fig and, meeting also the amazing VPs that I'm working next to.
Going forwards with 8fig now, what's the plans for the future? Because you obviously just had a big funding round quite recently. Where's the goals now? What's the dreams with 8fig? What's the things you want to achieve?
We really want to learn more about the entrepreneurial spirit behind our clients. We're getting to know many Shopify sellers now in a more intimate setting, that now that they've run with us a couple of lines and their business is starting to grow. We want to really feel the pain points. Shopify and Amazon are two different unique businesses, and they require two different entrepreneurs. Shopify entrepreneurs have more control, and Amazon entrepreneurs have a bit of, I would say, a challenge with Amazon controlling some of that business aspect. Like, Amazon ranks you higher, lower, that can affect your whole business. Shopify, it's really, sometimes you and the Instagram, Facebook algorithm. And when we get to intimately know our customers and we understand their pain points on a deeper level and not just the kind of the high level titles, it's allowing me as kind of entrepreneur resident to build out these mini products that are going to serve our customers. So I can tell you that I don't know many marketing teams that do what we do internally, but we have a developer in our marketing team. We have people writing PRDs in our marketing team, and we're building these mini products that are supposed to give value to our sellers even before the main product is ready for them. So that's kind of something that I'm really looking forward to, because we're using that scale and funding and the stage in the company to think bigger about how to be a 360 suite for sellers. And to be a 360 suite, you have to really develop more and beyond that core product, that software as a service that we're pushing. And sometimes these mini products will be a huge success and we'll intentionally shut them down to embed them in our larger product. And sometimes there'll be standalone products that will just be free and forever for the benefit of the community. So I think I'm really looking forward to just building things. And I think that's something that for me as an entrepreneur, it's really important. It doesn't matter the title, as long as you're building.
Yeah, and I think what you've done is really interesting, from becoming like a founder and entrepreneur yourself to then going to work in-house at 8fig. What do you think are some of the differences which maybe you didn't expect from going to work for a company compared to being an entrepreneur? Because you see with many entrepreneurs where they think, I can never work for somebody else again. If somebody out there is potentially thinking, oh, shall I make a similar move in the future? What advice would you give them?
Number one tip I can give to people is don't choose companies, choose entrepreneurs. And then you have to choose an entrepreneur who wants more entrepreneurs next to him. Obviously, a company cannot be run by 100 different entrepreneurs. That's just too many cooks in the kitchen. But adding people with an entrepreneurial mindset on the go in certain stages I think is something that is a huge learning experience that I'm part of that kind of test in a sense. I don't know a lot of success stories around buying companies, by the way, when entrepreneurs embedded after being bought out. Most mergers and acquisitions fail. And this might be an interesting hack in between for those who maybe are not interested to sell their company, but are interested to make a move and to work inside a bigger company. And if you find the right entrepreneur a CEO that respects your entrepreneurial spirit, then it can be a really good match. I'll just paint for you like an interesting scenario. Let's say your company is doing great and you reached much of your total addressable market and you want to reach new targets and you have this great idea for something new. Now, there's still so much to kind of, optimize on the current chip. How do you reach scale and from 0 to 1 in a new category? You can hire a very seasoned CEO to start sister company or daughter company. But many of the most well-established, or I would say well-recognized CEOs in the world are actually not entrepreneurs. They are very great. They're a CEO who's a great operator. I think about the Tim Cooks of the world, or whoever is running today or tomorrow, Google and Microsoft. These are great CEOs, but they're not entrepreneurs. You have to hire an entrepreneur if you want to build that next leg, or you can merger and acquire. The M&A comes with so much emotional baggage that maybe hiring an entrepreneur is really the hack that people should think about more often.
Is that something you think you're going to do in the future as well? Your own companies? You're going to hire entrepreneurs to kind of lead different arms?
Indeed. So I can tell you that right now we are looking for different positions and 8-fig to come join our marketing team. And at least 20% of the people we see are very unconventional. They have the word co-founder or founder in their LinkedIn. And a lot of times, even they're confused that we approach them. But when we meet face to face, it makes sense to them when we tell them, here's the company culture that we're pushing. We're pushing a company culture that is big on pushing people to bring more ideas. It's a company culture that's big on testing ideas and not being afraid to fail. It's a company culture that's about learning. And what is entrepreneurship if not all these things? We're looking for people to always ask why not with a question mark in the end, and not the people who will come join and just explain to everybody why not with an explanation mark in the end. And that is probably the most entrepreneurial thing that you can expect from someone, is to always ask why not, and to see, is there another way around the challenge? Like, you can't cross the wall this way, or you can't break the glass ceiling from there. What else do we have in, in our arsenal of options? And usually the entrepreneurial types will find ways. And that's the kind of people you want on your team.
With your own learning as well. So you're now trying to learn from 8-fig founders and from the sellers that you're providing services to. In the past, what was your main way of learning and growing as an entrepreneur? Was it by doing, or did you have mentors, or was it books or podcasts? What was your kind of method to try to learn more and to try to improve?
So there was one specific podcast. This is a shout out to Jason Calacanis and This Week in Startups, that really did an excellent podcast throughout the years to help entrepreneurs. I think the best episodes of This Week in Startups is kind of behind it. Just the best, episodes were the episodes of Jason sitting with entrepreneurs 10, 9, 7 years ago. I learned a lot from those. I think that in terms of the mentoring aspect, I call up a lot of CEOs and I ask bluntly them, what do they think about my X problem or my Y problem right now, or my Z problem? And I really tell them without no shame, I'm struggling with this. And I've been lucky to have a supportive system of CEOs. I think that today I am also able to be a great angel investor to the startups I invested in, through that kind of experience of, having the humbleness, and now creating a platform for other entrepreneurs to be humble with me and call me up and say what issues they have. And they all know I'm there for them 24/7. And it's just as much, as, my success as much as their success if their startup blows up in a positive way and starts gaining traction, since I've been there with them mostly from the beginning. I don't often invest in startups that have already traction. I'm there usually a stage before, because that's where my value shines.
For people listening today who want to get that kind of mentorship, or you said you had a network of CEOs you could talk to, how did you go about that, or how should they go about it today?
So I think it's really important to find CEOs who are brutally honest. If you have friends running companies, pick I would say, the opposite of the nicest ones to talk to. The ones that will sometimes make you feel a bit idiotic when you finish the call, and the ones that really, they'll give you the tough love. I think that tough love from other entrepreneurs was probably the biggest value I got. I think that today I provide also a lot of tough love to the people I interact with, and it kind of stuck with me. And it's something that I think that is really important when you're building something and there's a lot of stakeholders. There is this kind of like, I would say there's the kind of pull. You want to be nice to people and to be in a great atmosphere and everything. But what if you can crack being assertive and nice? That's like a very, very hard, I would say, message to convey. But if you can do that, you can have people respect you, listen to you, learn from you. And I looked for those people who had that ability to be assertive and nice in the same time.
I imagine, like, it's one thing which you hear it from different people, right? Of they've started their company and everybody around them is a yes person, and they're like, oh, that's an amazing idea. And like I said, that doesn't actually help anybody, because if it's a bad idea, if there's problems that they can see with it, it's better to say that. And that's being nicer than to just agree with somebody just because you're trying to please them or because you think it's going to make them happy, because you're setting them up for failure. And has there been anything in the past where somebody told you something that you didn't really agree with at the time, but then once you implemented that advice, you realize, oh wait, they were right, and it really helped you?
Yeah. So I think I experienced that a bunch of times, and today I have a way of going. Like, I think I have a handbook today, and we're on the Entrepreneur's Handbook, and the handbook kind of today shows me the path to get to the root of where did everything start to evolve from. So today, if, let's say somebody in 8fit comes up to me with a great idea for e-commerce sellers, and I think that the path, the thought process is good, but the idea is bad. I start moving the conversation from the idea and I push towards understanding the thought process, because I think there is where the diamond is sitting and waiting. And I ask people, okay, why did you offer it? And when did you start thinking about it? And what was the reason you thought this would be the right solution? And you start dissecting it from everywhere, but you don't give feedback on the idea yet. And once you understand how that whole idea got seeded in someone's mind and the thought process, and whole thing came to that point where somebody comes up to you and says, I have an idea, you can go back in time and find the point where they were a bit maybe off in terms of the data they were using, in terms of maybe a too optimistic approach, etc. And you can continue it with them from there. And usually it will result in an even better idea. And I think a lot of the things that I work on day to day with people is to actually put them in the entrepreneurial mindset I am in, even if they don't know that we're doing that in that moment. That kind of thought process of back and forward, just so we can leap forward aggressively later.
I like that process, because in a way what you're getting them to do is for them to work out the flaw themselves, which then gets their buy-in because they feel like they figured it out, rather than you telling them what to do, which then they might resent, or they might be like, oh no, but he doesn't understand. Whereas when you go through the process and how they're thinking, then you really get to that like actual nugget underneath, like, oh wait, this assumption is a bit too optimistic or this is too negative, and that can really get you through it. So it's been a pleasure talking to you today, Avishai. Where can people hear more about you and what you've been up to, and also 8fig too?
You can listen to more of my taught nuggets on my YouTube channel, which is Avishai Sam Bitton. I talk there about angel investing, startup investing, starting a startup, and choosing people. One of those latest videos I just published is which people I'm looking for at 8fig, because I'm always looking for great. If you follow 8fig, you're following me. If you're following me, you're following 8fig. So I highly recommend following 8fig because it's really a startup for businesses and for entrepreneurs. And you can check out 8FIG on YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. All the content we're doing is going up there. There are going to be a lot of interviews with entrepreneurs going live throughout 2022. So I really recommend following 8fig.